Oh, well then, fancy meeting you here at the Daily Space Weather. And congratulations on realizing the Smash News Network least busted name in news exists. It's another exciting day for solar activity. We've got new sunspots, some solar flaring, a spectacular CME, and plenty more to go over. This is the past 24 hours from SDO. We've got a huge filament fest going on. The likelihood of coronal mass ejections to continue is nearly 100%. They've been underperforming. There's a huge crown prominence filament hanging out up there just to the northwest of the Earth scale. Here's an even closer view of that. It is pretty berserk indeed. And allow me to get off the screen. So yeah, huge number of solar filaments here in the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. They tend to lead to coronal mass ejections. You can see them all over both the northern and southern hemispheres. And we've got new sunspots in the northeast, and a new one rose in the southeast. The most active region is this sunspot right over here. I don't memorize the names. Let's bring up an Einstein quote. Never memorize something that you can look up. Here's the equatorial view, and there's a great view of the Earth scale, the most active sunspot currently on the solar disk, at least the Earth-facing portion of it. And that spectacular CME that we'll be showing you later in the video came from up there in the northeast, somewhere above that Earth scale image. And let's take a look at sunspots here. So, yeah, there's a sunspot for you. How you like them apples? It has recently increased its flaring activity. And we're going to show you some close-up magnetograms and so on when we get into the sunspot section of the video. And let's take a look at sunspots from the ever-popular Solar Dynamics Observatory Continuum. So there you go. There is your SDO continuum. Again, looks like four new groups formed in the northeast right up here, and a new group rose down here in the southeast. So anybody who's telling you that the sun is shutting down, are they shutting up yet about it? Because it's just not a thing. If you think it's a grand solar minimum, you may want to, I don't know, watch our videos and enter into reality. You are invited to reality. And if you're a content creator and you've painted yourself into the corner, come out of the corner. The paint will eventually dry, but your credibility will never come back if you continue to shatter it with nonsensical videos about spooky space and your bunker supply sales. That's SDO colorized magnetogram yesterday plus today. Again, multiple new sunspot groups. The most active sunspot in the past few hours has been this one down here in the southeast. And let's take a brief moment to look at what's going on Croissant Earth. Check it out. Mayan has been producing some new lithospheric features. Yeah, it's been blasting out a bunch of hot lava bombs and producing a bunch of rock falls and so on. Luzon in the Philippines there. So a little uptick there at Luzon as a bunch of boulders have been rolling down the mountain. Ibu exploding in Indonesia. It's a flight level 060. It's producing a 6,000-foot volcanic ash plume. Krakatau, after 2 weeks of calm, seems to have picked up since today, which is, what? Since 7 June. The heck are they talking about? Okay, anyway. Looks like activity has picked up at Krakatau. So, yeah, degassing and water vapor there showing up at Krakatau. Perhaps another eruption about to occur there. Tukono exploding flight level 070 over Halmahera, Indonesia. And check it out, Iliamna at the Cook Inlet of southwest Alaska showing elevated seismic activity there. Also an ice rock avalanche. And last but not least on the list, Sabancaya in Peru exploding flight level 260. It's a 26,000-foot ash plume. Please do not fly your hang glider or even your drone over the volcanic ash plume. You might not get it back. and we want to see that great content. Anyway, next, looking at global seismicity. We've had quite a few seismic events in the U.S., none very large. Overall, worldwide, seismic activity is kind of low for the past 24 hours. We'll report quakes over a 5 magnitude and briefly show you the U.S. view, as we do tend to have more U.S. viewers than other countries. So here is the first on the list, a 5.0 at Peru. And you can see a series of quakes there on the west coast of South America. Yes, I can say words. 5.2 also struck Papua New Guinea. That was 1541 Universal Time yesterday afternoon. And keeping things in Universal Time makes things much easier, folks, as we've got people in all kinds of funky time zones, like Eugene the Philosopher, located in Minsk, Belarus. Anyway, there's a series of small quakes in the U.S. There's the full globe view for the past 24 hours. And it's time to get back to space. This would be a frontier. Yes, space. Let us know in the comments if you think it's the final frontier. I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, that is the past 24 hours from SDO 171 angstroms. It's the house favorite wavelength. Drop us a line and let us know if you've got one that you like better, as there are some that look visually similar, and there are some that are featuring similar chemicals. This is one of the many species of iron covered by the SDO. It's iron 9, I believe. Again, I don't memorize arbitrary stuff that I can easily look up. So let's get back to some space stats here, like the 10.7 centimeter radio flux, which is now at 169 solar flux units. And if you're wondering what a solar flux unit is, it is 10,000 Jansky. Yeah, 10,000 Jansky. It's a measurement of radiation traveling through the near vacuum of space. There's the 1-year graph of the radio flux to put it all in context for you. And the radio flux is if you're new to the channel, here's an interesting fact. The sun emits a higher radio flux density at solar maximum in the 10.7 centimeter radio flux range. That particular frequency is emitted much more densely around solar maximum than around solar minimum, which is what's depicted here. The black line is the radio flux, and the red line is the sunspot number, the other mainly widely understood feature of solar activity. We'll just say that, as there are other features that are just as, if not more, important, especially considering the actual mechanism that underlies the solar sunspot cycles. Anyway, the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard here, that's NOAA's forecast, not calling for any sort of geomagnetic unrest or geomagnetic storms. A little bit of geomagnetic unrest actually expected here by NOAA on the 8th. So on a Thursday there, no idea why. Maybe they thought the CME was traveling more slowly than NASA and we did, but we're expecting a CME impact sometime around midday tomorrow on June 7th. Now, I don't know what's happened to NASA's Enlil spiral. I just wanted to show you it here because check it out. Parker Solar Probe is making one of its Venus flybys. See that? It's doing a Venus slingshot maneuver right there. You can see it getting very close. Oh, that's a Mercury, actually. Also, Bepi Colombo there, very close to Mercury. So I just figured I would show that. I don't know what's going on with NASA's forecast here. It looks totally different. It has not changed our opinion of the of the CMEs that we saw. So next, looking at earthly magnetism. This is Earth's magnetic moment from space. The imagery on the right is part of the reason why we start to say that Earth is croissant-shaped. It's also just to create inflammatory merch and rhetoric on the internet because, well, that puts butts in seats. That's the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space and magnetohydrodynamic pressure. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground in magnetic flux density nanotesla. And when we do see geomagnetic unrest or storm conditions, this is a great way to get an idea of where you might be able to see the aurora. Keep in mind that happens almost instantaneously, so if you blink, you could miss it. In any case, that's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground for the past 4 hours. Next, planetary K-index currently at 1.33. Quite geomagnetically calm conditions, and the recent coronal hole high-speed streams have been duds. So, yeah, and the magnetic fields have been kind of weak also. So the real story is plasma filaments and sunspot activity at the moment. Looks like another weak coronal hole high-speed stream showing up here. The speed only made it up to 420 kilometers a second. Like, this is quite weak solar winds. 405 kilometers a second for the solar wind speed. Solar wind density just under 5 protons per cubic centimeter. The rest of that is pretty unremarkable. The GOES-16 and GOES-18 are geosynchronous orbiting satellites, and they're measuring the magnetic field sort of in between Earth and space. I mean, it's closer to space than Earth at about 23,500 miles of altitude. That's about where the GOES-16 and GOES-18 are located. They are using their magnetometers to measure the field in that area. It's like the outer Van Allen belt's outer portions. And that's the past 3 days here. It's looking pretty smooth. No significant space weather there showing up on the GOES magnetometer, and no surprises. Here's the heliospheric current sheet is next. And we've been saying for days and, well, throughout the solar cycle so far, that this North Pole coronal hole is going to eventually snap down, and it might actually be doing so here, as look at that. It's shrinking down quite small. There it is. And it looks like it's actually headed over here to the west. So it looked like it was going to snap down more toward Earth, frankly. But now it's looking like it's tending to want to move over to the west. So if you look at this, this is the past 4 days. You may notice that North Pole coronal hole there is looking like it's headed down toward the equator. So that is sort of one of the final mechanisms that we have to see in place before we could declare solar max. And it could be coming in a very short period of time. It can happen basically with zero warning. Here's our line of sight field plot. It depicts the Gong 2 ground-based magnetometer in grayscale, and then you can see the solar B field in blue, polar fields in green for north and red for south. Those are based on the PFSS lines, potential field surface source lines. Those are derived from magnetometers on stereo A and B and 51 magnetometers on Earth. So here's our coronal hole line of sight plot. Again, keep your eye on this coronal hole up here. You can see it's kind of suddenly lurching over there to the west. And it is just to the west of this crown prominence up here as well. So that is going to affect the ability for that crown prominence to stay anchored, I believe. So some interesting heliophysics going on here, and all kinds of evidence that solar max is just right around the corner here. Now, keep in mind, we are sort of expecting the levels of activity that we're seeing at the moment continue on for nearly 2 years or so. Keep in mind, folks, strong solar cycles tend to be shorter. Strong solar cycles tend to be shorter than weak solar cycles, which tend to be longer. Like a grand solar minimum, when those actually occur, seem to be lengthier cycles. And really strong cycles, like the one around 1960, tend to be really short cycles. I'm talking like a year shorter. So anyway, there is the coronal hole view from 211 angstroms. We can expect some intensifications of the solar wind from both of these coronal holes coming soon. And there's that North Pole coronal hole. That is something to watch. It might not be super easy to see from this wavelength, but it is indeed looking like it is on the move. So if that moves down right when it's in the Earth-directed portion of the solar disk, if it moves down like right now, that would be pretty cool because we'd be able to watch it happen. And it looks like it could be continuing to migrate there. So keep in mind, those things can suddenly lurch with absolutely no warning. And let's get to sunspots next. So here's a sunspot situation. Again, we're going to have like 4 more named sunspot groups up there in the northeast and a new named sunspot group in the southeast. So right down here. So at least 5 new named sunspot groups are likely to show up today. If you thought the sun was shutting down, enter into reality. People were calling for like 0 sunspots for years and years in a row, and this sunspot cycle is clearly much stronger than solar cycle 24. In order for a grand solar minimum, folks, you gotta have at least 2 week solar sunspot cycles in a row. We don't see that. We're seeing a very, at least average solar sunspot cycle. And let's take a look at some sunspots here in our SDO magnetogram. So what's really great about the magnetogram, folks, is that you can forecast solar flares. If you look super closely at the magnetic shear zones, you can actually forecast solar flares. It's a little difficult, and the best way to do it is to probably automate it. But this sunspot right here is a prime example. You'll be able to see some field evolution there. And I suppose we'll probably have to share a video as well as a science publication or 5 about these facts. Yes, you too can predict solar flares. It's just a matter of a close analysis of the magnetic shear. This is why we classify sunspots into different classifications, like alpha class, beta gamma class, and beta gamma delta class. Here's the SDO continuum view of this most active sunspot region. It might be fixing to produce a very large flare. I mean, it's certainly capable of that based on the magnetic fields that we see here. Again, they're the SDO magnetograms. You can see that new sunspot also rising there to the southeast of it. These are just basic facts, and this is not any kind of controversial anything. This is just, these are known, well studied and well publicized facts about the ability to forecast solar flares. And of course, most people don't care about solar flares. However, there are some people that are quite affected by space weather. Here we've put together the magnetogram plus 131 angstroms. As you can see, the magnetic filaments there, the plasma filaments there in that wavelength, 131 angstroms, as they're stretched between the opposite polarity fields. Some folks believe that flares cause coronal mass ejections. Other folks believe that coronal mass ejections cause the flares. Let us know what you think in the comments if you have an opinion on this, or if you've got, science for us to cover. We're more than happy to consider it, as there's a lot of work doing this process of making these videos. So next we're going to move to solar flares and energetic particles. Right after we show, well, here's one more series of images from SDO. That's yesterday plus today. Once again in SDO grayscale continuum. Again, that is multiple sunspot groups in the northeast. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then a new sunspot group down here. So we're expecting 5 new sunspot groups. That would be at least an increase in the sunspot number of 30, which means the sunspot number is now pushing 200. Next, the GOES proton flux flatlined despite some long duration solar flares recently happening. No relativistic particles showing up, at least in the at the GOES 16 and GOES 8 at the GOES 16 location. So the GOES 18 not showing up there for whatever reason. Anyway, but no SEPs happening at the moment. So there you can see 2 quite long duration frames. This one was like a triple spike. They were just C-class flares though, so not really a big deal. C6.3 or so. And here are some views. This is 94 angstroms SDO, another ionized iron species. And if you see this huge brightening up here in the northeast, that is where the CME came from. So you're going to see the CME making rounds today. We may make a video about it. It's not earthly directed, so it's not super important. I mean, it's a solar storm, but it's not headed toward Earth, so it's not super exciting, although it is visually pleasant. We're not interested in doing the same thing as everybody else. We're interested in setting trends, not chasing fads. Chasing fads is for people with zero imagination, skill, talent, and training. That's the past 24 hours of 94 angstroms there from SDO. Again, that sunspot right below the Earth scale is the most active region at the moment. It has the type of magnetic fields that could produce M or even X-class flares. Here we've put 131 angstroms together for the same time frame. That's 24 hours SDO. And there are those C-class flares at the end of that run. And once again, there was a CME from a coronal mass ejection was emitted from the northeastern limb. It's kind of on the opposite side of the sun there. It's certainly not earthly directed whatsoever. And there are the frames of that. We actually increased the speed of this to 45 frames because it's a full 24-hour video there. And it's kind of just still on its way out. It's probably on the way out by now, but there's a little bit of data delay going on at the moment. So, hey, what can you do? But massive CME happening there, not earthly directed. We are expecting a CME impact tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. Now, you're encouraged to look up. If you'd like to make yourself a star chart, we'd like to use skyandtelescope.org. This is what's going on over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Just put in your zip code. You can build your own star chart. And if you're going on a cycling vacation, why not join us in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, one of the world's top cycling communities. People come from all around the world to race in Trexlertown, Pennsylvania every year. World-class racing every Friday night at the Valley Preferred Cycling Center. Anyway, here is the solar system forecast. This is where things are today. We'll advance heavenly bodies 1 week. In 1 week, we will have a crescent waning moon, which makes me excited because I'm a fan of new moon. Yeah, I like dark nights. I have spectacularly good night vision. And let's talk about affiliate/sponsors. Did you know that we make just this side of nothing to put the content on YouTube? Yeah, that's why we have created a massive web infrastructure and picked up some affiliates and sponsors. So, the one that is showing up as a paid promotion in this video for YouTube is Hemp Lucid, also Amazon, and some others that we'll cover here just in a moment. So yeah, do your Hemp Lucid shopping via our link, which you can find right in the description below the video, or just enter the promo code SMASHOMASH while checking out your hemplucid.com order. Thanks to the folks over at Hemp Lucid and everybody who's been picking up products, improving your health, sending out great gifts, perhaps, as gift giving is an art form. So anyway, help out the channel by entering the promo code SMASHOMASH on your Hemp Lucid checkouts. Save 10% by doing that, or shop via our link. Thanks to everybody once again and folks over at Hemp Lucid. Again, we've created a massive web ring. So we're not just on social media. We have our own servers. Yes, smashomash.com. And welcome to the Neo Renaissance. So help us out by clicking links if you are unable and or unwilling to open your cobweb-encrusted wallet. Give Smash staff a raise by assisting the channel via clicks. Thanks to everybody who's done that. You can also find links on the homepage of the Amazon shop right there. Just click that link, and you'll see our Amazon shop. Today's featured product is being worn by me currently. It's the Pink Flamingo Hawaiian shirt, and I've been a Hawaiian shirt collector for a long time. That is in our space wear, because when you're going to space, make sure that you've got a Hawaiian shirt to go with your chrome hat. They look great together, folks. So check out the spacewear list on the Amazon shop. And if you want some more provocative stuff, check out the Redbubble shop, as these are original designs This one is Mensa, which stands for Make Earth Not Suck Again. You may have noticed Earth sucking especially hard the past 3 years. Well, we certainly have, as various aspects of our business ventures have been suppressed for no good reason by deboosting features, shadow bans, outright bans, etc. So that's the main reason why we made a massive web ring. It was a result of censorship. We said, well, I guess we better make our own website since there's basically no choice in the matter. So we're doing our part to make Earth not suck again. You ought to also. Start a conversation with our Mensa shirt. It's up to you to make Earth not suck again, and pretty soon smashomash.org is going to be a tax-deductible nonprofit organization, so that should change things a bit. What do you think? Make Earth not suck again. It's up to you. This has made it all the way to Tasmania, by the way, and thanks to Dirk. Now we're looking at coronagraphs. And this is yesterday's coronal mass ejections. And it was pretty quiet there. Only some minor CME activity. And here's today's, which is less. Let me see if I can get any additional frames there. Nope, just 23 frames. So there you can see that large CME there coming out of the northeastern limb. Here's Soho, Lasco, C2 and C3. And it looks like that has updated a little bit since we did show prep. Again, no indication that that is an earthly directed coronal mass ejection. However, it is quite scenic indeed. Let's see what Stereo A had to see there. Stereo A's got nothing. But there's Soho Lasco C3. There's the latest image that we got during show prep. And let's talk filaments. Because filaments pepper the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Check out this crown filament that we showed earlier in the video. That is quite huge and quite dense. Of course, the one that was down here ended up earthly directed, or at least having an earthly directed component. We and NASA think. For some reason, NOAA doesn't agree with us. It's pretty uncommon for Tamitha Skov, NASA, and our channel to all agree that a CME may have an Earth-directed component. Maybe NOAA ought to be watching our videos. Elon Musk certainly ought to be watching our videos. Remember when he lost like 40 Starlink satellites? Yeah, we forecasted that geomagnetic storm. He launched spacecraft into it. Facts. And the facts are there are a lot of filaments, so many of these could cause Earth-directed solar storms. And here's the past couple of hours, and you can see the uptick of activity. Perhaps a frenzy of activity here kicking off right on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. That's the past just couple of hours there from the GOES 18 SUVI. That's 304 angstroms. Ionized helium. And if you think space is fake, well, this is not visible from the ground level. However, many of the features that are visible here are visible from the ground level, like those giant filaments that are rising in the northeast. If you think space is fake, and you think these images are fake, then why are these representations? Are these just CGI images of ground-based solar telescope images? Who would go through the trouble of doing that? It's a ridiculous an idiotic theory. Oh, space is fake. I'm unable to explain the day-night cycles and the seasons in a single theory. But I don't believe that we live on a spinning ball. I think that water always finds its level, and it's talk about low-hanging fruit. What a joke. Let's get to bonus features. Charging hazards are non-existent. Satellites are having a clear time, which means our weather data should look pretty good. The GOES electron flux here is kind of on the low side. Again, it's been a really weak coronal hole high-speed stream, so it's not just cratered as low as it gets. It's kind of in a somewhat of an operating range there, but it is on the low side. There's the one-year graph to put it in context, and here is the forecast model. NOAA expecting similar levels there. I don't know, I would expect a slightly lower level when the CME impact happens tomorrow. We'll see what happens. Who do you think's right, NOAA or us? Anyway, since the electron flux is measured at the F layer of the ionosphere, and because the ionosphere is in many ways the bridge between Earth and space, let's show the F layer. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with the penetration of electromagnetic radiation, chemical signatures, and temperatures in the atmospheric layers. So here's the F ionosphere. Nothing too crazy going on there. It's looking pretty normal. And for everybody trying to forecast the end of the world, don't use that data. It doesn't look spooky in any way. Here's the anomalygram depicting anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. And those low-frequency anomalies, those are what you'd expect around this time of year as winter is approaching for the southern hemisphere. So it's just a weak coronal hole wind stream. It's not having very much effect on things. And keep in mind, the ionosphere doesn't have very much of an effect on the troposphere, as it's hundreds of kilometers above it. At least not immediate effects, of course. Anyway, here's the latest image. That's 11:45 universal time for the ionogram, and the same time, 11:45 universal time for the anomalygram. Great example here of the location of the South Atlantic anomaly. Where the blue is, electrons are flowing one way, and where the red is, electrons are flowing the other way. Or you could say ions, or, well, I won't get into the weeds on the physics of that either. However, we will show you the total electron content, since it's the daily space weather, not a cosmology video. Total electron content is free electrons up to about 12,500 miles of altitude. And we are seeing some significant GPS errors here, perhaps giving us some ideas about signals from the Earth side of things, because keep in mind, space weather is largely an interaction of the solar wind and planet Earth. So some electrons here significantly out of place. You can see some rather high electron contents there, very far south of the equator. Also the northern hemisphere there, seeing some significant GPS errors, likely perhaps in unexpected locations. And for all our North American viewers, there is a close-up animation of just the North American electron content anomaly from the 10-day average. Once again, we are seeing anomalies around the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, Central America, Mexico, and a little bit on the west coast of the U.S., a little bit in the Pacific Ocean out there. I'll let it play through one more time. And interestingly enough, as time goes on, we hear less people claiming that they are able to forecast earthquakes accurately. Cheers. Last but not least, we've got the latest SDO continuum and latest SDO magnetogram. So here's this new sunspot. That one just rose. So far, it's only alpha class, but it may have trailing umbrae that are of opposite polarity. Whoops. And here's the most active sunspot. It is beta gamma delta class, and you can see that magnetic shear that we were talking about. Hang on a minute. All right, so there's a perfect example of it, and it's talking about right here. You've got strong north umbral fields. And then in that same location, just south of it, you've got strong south umbral fields. That is the kind of thing that leads to large solar flares. Again, this is not any kind of conspiracy theories, folks. This has been known about for probably a decade or more. I think it's more like 2 decades. Pushing 2 decades. And of course, all of these new sunspots. 1, 2, 3, 4 more groups just formed in the northeast. So if you think that's a grand solar minimum, your definition of a grand solar minimum is fully berserk. Look at all those new sunspots. What are you talking about? Oh no, the sun's shutting down. And when the sun shuts down, it always produces a lot of sunspots, right? Good God, people are paid millions of dollars to just lie to their viewers. Or, upper level 6 figures Oh, hi, I need 4 YouTube channels to tell people that I'm broke. I need 4 YouTube channels, one of which is making 6 figures for the last 4 or 5 years. Pretty pathetic. Now we're moved to the meteorology segment because my rant about grifters has ended. What we're looking at once again is, and every once in a while, every couple days, we look at sea surface temperature anomaly and currents. So there you go. There is the sea surface temperature anomaly and currents. And I put this green circle on this spot right here because this is what alarmists are going to say is going to create a year without a summer in Europe. Because there's water that's 16.3 degrees Fahrenheit below normal temperature there. It's caused by massive amounts of melting snow in the northern hemisphere. And but the good news for Europe is that, look, there's a bunch of warm water all around Ireland and Iceland, an indication that the Gulf Stream is still making it up there to warm the European continent. So, yeah, if you're banking on a year without a summer, you're doing some bad banking. I would cash in those T-bonds or whatever kind of crappy banking that you're doing. And no, I don't want to talk about crypto. All right, so, yeah, that's the sea surface temperature anomaly and ocean currents. We'll briefly show the whole planet here. There is the largest source of heat on the surface of the planet, right there. All that water, yeah, water. It has a very, very high heat latency, unlike air, and even rocks, most of them. So anyway, the cold water around the equatorial Pacific is, whoops, gone. And there is a swastika that has appeared in the northern Pacific. What do you think about that? And of course, that means that NASA is controlling the weather. Next, the Indian Ocean. There's the Indian Ocean. And of course, let us know if you... I know what you think's happening here. You think that... Pardon that arrow. You think that right there is a HARP base on a ship out in the middle of the ocean, which is controlling sea surface temperatures or something through magical, non-existent physics processes. Next, the Indian Ocean. There you go. Hot water around the eastern portion of India and normal water around the western portion of India. I'm sorry, I have it reversed. Warm water west of India and normal, watch out folks, there's normal temperature water here. It's sound the alarm bells, folks. There's the Southern Ocean, a mix of turbulent warm and cold water as it just goes around and around Antarctica, the highest, driest continent. There's the Atlantic. And we're getting some cold equatorial water there off the west coast of Africa. I'm sure that'll set somebody off. And there is the Arctic. Anyway, I guess I better hurry up here as we're going to go backwards. Surface winds depicted here. Strong winds there in between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. Jet streams depicted here. Incoherent jet streams continue over the U.S. Jet streams of the central world depicted here. Surface winds depicted here. Surface winds of the east depicted here. A strong low has formed in the Southern Ocean, south of Australia. And there's still one off the coast of the Philippines as well, to its east coast. And there is the jet stream scenario for this side of the planet. And let's blast through some more stuff. Quick note here, there's still a lot of snow despite all that hot air in Colorado. So all that hot air coming out of Colorado has not been sufficient to melt all that snow. The epic melts are going to continue for Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming especially. There's still a lot of snow left there, Mike. So I don't know. You may want to head out to Colorado there and maybe I don't know, have some kids and enroll them in a cult school. That might be good. So let's look at the snow situation. This is Global Cryosphere Watch, and the snow mass balance is on the low side of the 1982 to 2012 average. The snow extent is on the high side of the 1998 to 2011 average, and the snow water equivalent is still kind of high. So again, meltwaters will continue. There's still plenty of snow to melt in Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. Next, we'll show clouds and fog over the Americas, as NASA just keeps lying to you with these photoshopped images of a spherical planet. Talk about low-hanging fruit. The flat Earth is the lowest. It's almost as pathetic. Actually, it's even more pathetic than the electric universe. All right, so here is the U.S. weather map. It's weather.gov. We're scrolling down to show you the alerts, what the key means, to tease you to head to the website if you have weather alerts, as that's too much stuff for us to cover. Those are red flag alerts in eastern Pennsylvania, by the way, because it is very dry. So watch out with your fires. The incoherent jet stream will continue for the next 3 days. This is the GFS 72-hour 250 millibar wind speed forecast, as cold air continues to come down from a low that's formed right over Nova Scotia, and it's headed down toward New England. So that's going to keep the jet stream kinked here for a while. The incoherent jet stream over the U.S. will continue. I think it's starting to reform there toward the end of the week. Here's a 72-hour GFS temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. Most of the country there remaining quite cold. It's been a cold June so far, and it looks like it's going to continue for every place except for the Northwest. And last but not least, we've got the pressure and precipitation forecast based on the same model, which is the, I feel like a broken record, the GFS 72-hour forecast. We show such short forecasts because they tend to be accurate. We don't put up like 3-week forecasts and say, oh my God, there's going to be a blizzard in June. We're all going to die. Get in the bunker. Look out. I don't know anything about meteorology. So I show a 3-week weather forecast. Now that I got that out of my system, here's lightning. Strong lightning around Central America continues, also the southern portion of the U.S., and a bit of Canadian lightning in places like Alberta. Here's the current situation. It's lightningmaps.org. It's a real-time lightning map. Keep in mind, it doesn't have sensors everywhere. Lightning continues around the Mediterranean. And only some minor thunder showers in the U.S. And by the way, if you were not aware, here at the Smash News Network, Least Busted Name of News, we don't delete people's comments. We also do not ban or mute anybody. Did you know that if somebody mutes you on YouTube, you'll be able to see your comment and nobody else will be able to? Yeah, lots of science channels have a tendency to do this because they're not doing science, they're doing dogma. And when you're doing dogma, there's ample reason to isolate yourself in a bunker to avoid the criticism of people who understand anything about what you are talking about. We are free speech purists on the channel, which is why we don't mute or ban anybody. We encourage all legal speech. And we encourage you to become members of the Smash Team if you'd like additional content. These videos are brought to you in part by Gold and Silver Smash Team members. There's also a Bronze membership, once again, for you folks who are unable or unwilling to open your cobweb-encrusted wallets. SmashOnMash.com/Smash Team is our custom subscription services site, launched back in October 2021, to provide more information than we even need to, as we've built a massive infrastructure to support this content. Anyway, and thanks for leaving comments, John and Mike. Here are the U.S. Doppler radar data. Some precipitation there around southern Alaska and around that low we just talked about, just northeast of Maine. Here's clouds and fog. You can see that rotating low there just making landfall, blowing across Nova Scotia. And there's a bunch of dry air right in the middle of it. That won't help to strengthen that, and it is forecast to weaken in the coming days as we showed you in the forecast. So there's that low right there, rotating counterclockwise as they do in the northern hemisphere. And here's your recap. U.S. Doppler radar. Clouds and fog. And there is the water vapor map. We hope there are no swastikas made out of sea surface temperature anomalies in your location, and we hope that your bunker is just the right depth. In the meantime, may that solar wind be at your back. I am once again headed back to the bunker.